But thank you so much. Um, yeah, I want to really talk this afternoon about this concept. You've all signed up to this thing called Loyalty Day, for which I'm absolutely delighted. Um, Richard and I talk about loyalty quite a lot. We've got it in our name, um, and I wanted to really talk about what do we mean by loyalty. It's such an important concept. It's important to us as individuals in our private lives, and obviously it's important to us in our working lives as we talk about loyal donors and loyal supporters and wanting to build the loyalty of our supporters. So I really want to start really by thinking about what we mean by this. I started by looking in the dictionary, and there are a few definitions. The quality of being faithful in your support of someone or something. That's the Oxford Dictionary. That faithfulness to commitments or obligations. The quality of staying firm in your friendship or support for someone or something. And I was looking at them and thinking, oh gosh, they don't, to be honest, they don't quite do it for me. They don't feel that they're really, I mean, there's more to it, isn't there, than being faithful. Loyalty is something that's actually gets to the very heart of who we are. So I thought, let's just take a minute to start with and think about, if you can think about who or what you are loyal to. Could be a person, it could be a family member, a partner, it could be a brand, it could be a community, it could be a sports team, it could be any number of things. But just think about, when we ask you the question about loyalty and we use that word and we say who you're loyal to, what sort of people or things come to mind? And when you're thinking about that, think about that loyalty. Think about what it means to be loyal. Think about why you're loyal. Why are you loyal to some things and not to others? Think about how it feels for you when you're loyal to something. How does it feel to you? And when you know someone is loyal to you, how does that make you feel? I would just like to sort of hold some of those thoughts as we go through it. Now, I'm going to tell you how I feel. And you know, many of you will know that I could talk about the concept of loyalty for hours and hours and hours and hours and hours. I could also talk about Reading Football Club for hours and hours and hours and hours and hours. So just imagine how long I can talk for when I talk about my loyalty to Reading Football Club. Don't worry, we haven't got hours and hours and hours and days. Yeah, but I've talked about this before, and I've talked about my loyalty to Reading Football Club, and I've talked about that irrational loyalty. And believe me, as a Reading fan, it is completely irrational. But it really comes down to how I feel. I support Reading, and we share a dream. We share a goal, a pipe dream. Sometimes you might think about with us. When I think about the club, I think about a whole range of different emotions and feelings. I think about pride when I see us doing well and playing well. I think about embarrassment when days like today actually we're in the press because we've been docked points for overspending, effectively cheating. I'm slightly embarrassed about that. I go to matches with a sense of anticipation. You'd think by now that would have been beaten out of me, but I still go with that sense of anticipation with what you call them in the stuff, butterflies in the stomach. I still experience that sense of joy when we do well and score, or that sense of despair when it all goes horribly wrong, and frustration when I see things not working. And just every now and again, I feel a little bit let down if I think players aren't playing, or they're not really, they don't appear to be putting in the effort that I'd want them to be. But no matter how I feel, yep, I'll be back. I'll come back again. I'll give us another cheer next time. That's very much sort of my relationship with Reading Football Club. Now let's try and convert that into the question of how loyal am I? I'm thinking about, Stuart, what you said in the last session there. You sort of said we know we've got loyal supporters, and I'm thinking, oh gosh, we need a metric, because that's more than just how people feel. But how loyal am I? I go to around 10 matches a season. Does that make me more loyal or less loyal than a season ticket holder or someone who goes less? I don't think so. I don't think it affects that. I've got a collection of Reading shirts from over the years. Does that make me more loyal or less loyal than someone who buys a fake shirt off eBay? What about the person who buys home and away kits every year? Are they more loyal or less loyal than me? I don't think that's the way to answer that question of loyalty. I drink my coffee, here we go, out of a Reading mug. I've got a miniature Reading kit in the back of the car. I've got scarves and gloves and hats and flags and all sorts of things. What does that say about me? I think I'd rather you didn't answer that question, if you don't mind. Absolutely none of that defines how I feel about the club, how I feel about Reading Football Club. And it's not just that. None of my behaviours would define how I feel about my wife, my family, my community, a shop that I particularly like, a brand that I particularly engage with. It's much more emotional than that. It's absolutely ingrained into who I am and how I feel about things. And it's exactly the same for us as a sector. We talk about loyal donors. We have that aim of really building the loyalty of our supporters. And then we say, and we know we've got loyal supporters because the number of times they've given has gone up. Well, loyalty is not the number of times someone gives to you. Loyalty is not retention. Loyalty is not repeat giving or upgrades or consent. It's not even a gift in the will. Loyalty, those are all behaviors. Loyalty is what the supporter feels. It's that passion that they feel for you or your cause. It's that thing inside them that makes them want to support you now and long into the future. These things that we look at, of course, I'm not saying that they're not absolutely vital metrics, and I'm not saying actually that's the end goal. That of course we want to. We're all here because we want to raise the money and resource our organisation so that we can do more of the work that we all desperately need to do. But those in themselves are not loyalty. They're a consequence of high loyalty. When loyalty is good, the number of times people give will go up. In much the same way as when loyalty is low, more supporters will lapse. And I think it's really important that we understand the distinction there, that the difference between behaviours then and the loyalty. And what I loved about Stuart and Sarah's session, and we're going to hear others as well, is absolutely that focus, not just on the behaviour, but the real focus on how supporters feel and the values and the way you communicate and the language you use and the supporter chair in the room when you're making decisions, all of that, very much about how the supporter feels and having that absolutely ingrained across the organisation. So our research has been going on now for since 2014, and we've seen through that time that there are 3 building blocks that go to creating loyalty. 3 elements that have to come together to create a really loyal supporter. And the first of them, go through the 3. The first of them is commitment. It's that passion for what you do. It's that knowing that the goal of what you do and thinking that the aim of and the goal of what you do and your ambition is really important. And not only is it important, it's important to me that you are successful. That's when a supporter will be really committed to you, when it's important to them whether or not you are successful. That's when they will grow their commitment to you. For me, in my terms, it's standing on the terraces. I was going to say singing, shouting would be a more accurate description. I'm reading till I die. I know I am, I'm sure I am, I'm reading till I die. And that's the commitment that we share, and that's the commitment we want to build in our supporters. For our supporters, then, the second building block, the second thing that has to come together is satisfaction. Satisfaction, it's that happiness about the way you communicate with them. It's as Sarah talked about earlier on, not thinking of them as a cash machine or a money pot, but really recognizing them as a person and recognizing them and responding to their needs and building experiences for them that they value and enjoy. There's no better example of this, I think, than the humble, or shouldn't be humble at all, thank you letter that sometimes we overlook, but it has such a powerful opportunity to make a supporter feel really good in the relationship, to really make them feel valued and recognized as a person, as an individual, rather than as we were talking about before, a cash point machine. I've just put a link there to the most fantastic article on Sophie. If none of you, if you've not been in there before, it's I think it's an essential read. It's a fantastic article. So satisfaction, how you make people feel. For me, it's about the magic of a 97th minute winner against Wigan when you're battling with Wigan against relegation. That might be the goal that keeps you up at the end of the season. It's the joy you feel at that moment, and that's the joy that we need to replicate for our supporters. And then the third building block, or the third pillar of loyalty, is trust. Trust that you do the right thing. Trust that you deliver what you say you're going to deliver. Trust that you do it in the right way. And again, that came out very strongly in some of what we've heard. For me, again, it's not cheap going to football these days, day out. But it's trust that when we get there, they'll give their all. I don't expect them to win every week. Goodness knows I don't expect them to win every week, but I do expect them to try and put the effort in. So behind loyalty are these three concepts: commitment, that passion for your cause, and that it's important to the supporter that you're successful; satisfaction, that your communications are valued and make the supporter feel good; and trust, that you behave in the right way and do the right things. Now, these are all emotions. They're not behaviors, they're emotions. We've seen this across all our surveys over the years. These come out. Of course, what sits behind them will be different for different causes. What makes someone committed to a health charity will be different from what makes someone committed, a supporter of an environmental charity committed to that cause, or a supporter of an international charity. Again, different causes. But the concept of commitment, concept of satisfaction, concept of trust really sits across. But because we know that what sits behind them is different, if we want to grow these things, if we want to grow commitment, if we want to grow satisfaction, if we want to grow trust, then we need to understand really what makes them up, and how that differs for different organizations, but what sits behind them. And what we've done in our research is we've been looking at a lot of other factors in there, looking at what other factors affect the way people feel about the support, about the charities they support, and then how do they fit into this model we're looking at on screen. And one of the factors we look at is values, and we ask about whether you have shared values, shared faith with or you feel you do with the charities that you support. What we see is that those people who believe they had shared values with an organization tend to have higher commitment. It can be an element for some people that really creates commitment to that cause. And I think when we think about that, we perhaps think of religious charities and how important that shared faith element of that would be, and we can see that. Or maybe we think of a Greenpeace or an Amnesty, very values led and very upfront with their values there, and their support. But actually, this can be relevant for everyone. I mean, the RNLI is a very traditional charity, but I'm sure many of you saw the hassle they were given. Can't think of a better word, not that I can say in public, over the summer, because they were rescuing people who are trying to get into the country across the channel, and they were rescuing them. They got into trouble, and they came out with the most fantastic statement of why they do it and the values, and that we do not judge those we rescue. Where we believe there is a risk to life at sea, we will always launch in response to a call from HM Coast Guard. We want to be absolutely clear that we are incredibly proud of the work our volunteer lifeboat crews do to rescue vulnerable people in distress. They were so upfront about their values. It was fantastic, and it really struck a chord with their supporters and generated income off the back. That wasn't why they did it, but it's fantastic the impact it had. That's a factor. Another factor that can grow commitment is this concept of risk. It's the belief that actually, if I stop giving to you, then actually you're not going to be able to make the difference for the things I care about, that I want you to make a difference. It's that feeling that actually I'm really close to the impact you're having, and that can make me feel really committed to you as a charity. It's perhaps sort of built into some forms of support in say, for example, cash giving, where we're asking for appeals, and each time we're reinforcing that actually we need you to support to be able to do this work. Perhaps it's less built into others, like regular giving, where once someone's giving, it's ongoing. But there are products, I mean, Sponsor a Child is perhaps the most striking example of this, where it's actually built in, the risk of stopping supporting is built in. Once you've got that relationship with the beneficiary, it's very, very difficult to stop. You wouldn't want to let her down, would you? The giving of support and knowledge. And what we see with this is that's a really powerful way, a really important way of growing a supporter's satisfaction. If you want people to feel satisfied, give them knowledge, give them something, but in many cases, give them knowledge. People sign up to newsletters. Newsletters are there to, and we've seen example of that. Newsletters are there to help people and give people give information, and all that's one of the tasks. They're there for feedback and other things as well. But it doesn't have to be these big long-term sort of sign up for a newsletter, sign up for an e-newsletter, etc. There are lots of this is the Independent, the BBC was doing it, and other media channels. Sign up for news about COP26. You can be doing quite specific time-oriented things here in terms of giving people information that will make them that's really about giving something to your supporters and your contacts. There's the concept of perceived performance, which is really, really important in growing trust. The perceived performance, that people believe you are successful, people believe you are effective. And as we grow that and make people realize how, or see how effective we are, that can grow trust. And as we've seen, we see this through reporting back on impact and impact reports. That are a very powerful way of doing this. But it doesn't have to be big things like that as well. My LinkedIn feed at the moment has a lot from Animals Asia in there, always telling me about another bear that they've rescued and the story of that bear, really demonstrating the impact. In this case, on a single case study basis, constantly reaffirming the impact of what you're doing. Is really powerful. For health charities, very clearly, when people see the benefit of your work and they see it for themselves or people that are close to them, that can be really powerful in growing loyalty. Now, what I've seen in our research is that really is quite limited to health charities, but it's really important for those health charities. We did a campaign. It's a long time ago with AICR as they were then, the now World Cancer Research. And asked them to share their stories of why cancer, what their cancer stories. Incredible stories and content that we had permission to use. But actually, more important than that, we got people thinking about why cancer and why cancer research was important to them, and linking that to AICR and that context as well. And then there's an area that we've looked at much more recently, and this is an area that there's quite a bit of research coming out, both within our sector and outside, around the concept of well-being and meeting of basic psychological needs. And I'm not going to go into this research, but there's a lot that you can look up and see. But basically, the 3 psychological needs that we all have and need to be met: the feeling of autonomy, that we're in control; the feeling of competence, that we're able to do things that are important to us; the feeling of relatedness and connectedness to others. And we're seeing, and it's early days with this for us, we're seeing that this can have a really close relationship with satisfaction. That as you meet those psychological needs, and you can see it with the way you communicate and tell people about give them, letting them feel in control of whether they giving them the competence to know that they're making a difference, making them feel connected to beneficiaries or other members if it's membership, etc. You can see exactly why that is so important in terms of satisfaction. So our model, which started quite simply, has extended a little bit here, and it's got other elements to it. The point I want to make is all of this is important. Some of these will be more important for some supporters and for some causes than others, but all of this is important, and none of this is about measuring behaviors and interactions. This is actually about the emotional relationship that people feel and your supporters feel. So if I've got a plea from today, what I'd say is it's all about, we need to think differently as a sector about what we mean by loyalty. We need to move away from just the behavioral metrics, and really think about loyalty, that it's not retention. Loyalty is the way people feel. Retention is simply what happens when you get loyalty right. That focus on commitment, satisfaction, trust, those are the pillars that really grow loyalty across all supporters, all charities. We also then need to learn what's important, uniquely important for your donors. And there will be some things that are important for all your donors because of who you are and what your cause is. And there'll be some things that are important for individual donors. And that's about understanding individual, whether that's at the segment level or one-to-one level, individual drivers and needs. And we need to, when we create change, on the back of that, we need to create change. We need to do things differently. We need to change the way we communicate and really orientate ourselves around the supporter to do that. With any change, you need measurement. And of course, that's what creates this virtuous circle that takes us back around. Because if we start measuring different things, if we start measuring loyalty rather than measuring behaviors, then as we measure different things, we learn different things. And as we learn different things, that prompts us to think differently again. So that's what I want to leave you with today. Just that thought that can we think differently about loyalty and really recognize that loyalty is that emotional connection that people feel, much more importantly than the behaviors that then are the result of getting loyalty right. So thank you very much.
Roger, that's absolutely fantastic. Thank you. Absolutely brilliant. I'm going to talk about this again in the future, I'm sure. But I think the way you use Reading as an example, I know I've already told you how brilliant it is. But thinking about thinking about the just making it really real by the number of tickets you buy or the bits of kit that you buy or whatever, those things that actually it's so easy to think of that as loyalty, but it's not. And I think that's just such a powerful example. So in the previous break, I'd said people could ask questions in whichever format they wanted, and Vicky has her hand raised. So I'm going to let Vicky ask her own question. Okay, Vicky. I think you need to unmute. Maybe Vicky didn't ask a question.
Might be worth going on to another one, and Vicky might come back.
Okay. Okay. So I have some questions, Roger. I have some questions that have been building up over the course of your talk. So yeah, so there's one around seeing the benefit just being linked to health charities. And is it? I think the question, I've lost my chat thing now. But it was something to do with, is it just restricted to health, or are there other sectors that could be relevant and applicable to?
So from the research we've done, it was just restricted to health charities. But not every sector was included in that. So we had children's charities in there, we've had international charities in there, we've had homelessness charities in there, we obviously had health charities in there. So from that group, we saw that there were causes where it wasn't relevant compared to the other factors. However, I would believe strongly that if we're talking about causes where there is that personal connection, hospitals, hospices, universities, and I'm sure there's others I can't think of off the top of my head, where you have that really personal connection, where there's the potential that a donor is also a service user. I think that's where you will start to see that it's an important concept again.
And there was another, thank you very much. Thank you. There was also another question on meeting on the well-being slide, and that it links to satisfaction. And so where does it? So you've already talked about other things like thanking with satisfaction. Where does that kind of well-being, and where does that well-being sit alongside thanking? Which is more important?
Oh gosh, I don't think it's which is. I can't answer the which is more important, because they're two sides of the same coin, if you like. The thanking is an opportunity to build well-being, and I kind of maybe in the future we'll do a session just on that, because I think it's such an important area, and it's not just us that's looking at this. I know others are looking at this as well. But I think it's if we think about the three things, it's quite easy to translate that into our charity language. So autonomy, someone feeling in control, is quite easy to think of. Well, people don't like to be bombarded with communications. They don't like to feel forced into giving. They like to feel that it's their choice. So the way we ask is really important in that. The way we communicate, the way we let people feel in control and of the relationship is important in that, in terms of the experience. If we think about competence, and really important that people feel that they are making a difference and able to make a difference to things that are important to them. I mean, that if we talk about thanking, what a fantastic opportunity thanking is, to tell people the difference they've made. But that's absolutely, that's why we say, when you feed back to a supporter, tell them the difference they've made, not the difference you've made, the difference they've made. And that's about giving them that feeling of competence that they've made the difference. And similarly, relatedness, building that closeness to other people, whether that's a beneficiary, whether that's one of your support workers, care staff, program staff, or other members, if it's a membership thing, all of those. So the thank you letter, I mean, the reason I talk about thank you letters being so important, and many of you will know John Gray and his research that shows that the thank you is remembered by 70% more people. Sorry, 70% of people remember the thank you more than they remember the appeal. And yet we don't give it I don't think as a sector we give it the kudos it really deserves. But what a fantastic opportunity to make someone feel that they've made a great decision to give, that they've done something really effective and really good, and that they're not alone in their love of the cause and the difference they're making. But it's not only thank you letters, that's newsletters, appeals, everything.
Fantastic. And I think we've probably got time to squeeze one more question in, and I haven't picked this one on purpose, but it's a bit of an old favourite. But you know, you've talked about commitment, satisfaction, and trust, but you've always talked about commitment and satisfaction and trust. Has it changed? Will it change?
To me, I summarise it, and we can get all very scientific with it, and we do the research, and I've done the research, or we've done the research now 8 or 9 times, and it's always come out. Actually, I'll always remember talking to Adrian Sargent about it, and he said, well, it's basically we're saying when someone loves what you do and they think it's important, they're happy with the way you communicate with them, and they trust you to do it in the right way. What else do we need? I don't think it will change.
Okay, that's fair enough. So I think we might have time for just one more, which is from Samantha Lane, who's asked, I loved your comment about loyalty being about what people feel, not what they do. How does that relate to lapsed activity? How do you address the challenge of targeting communications on things we can't record on a database? Or can we?
First of all, hi Sam, used to work with Sam. So the question, Richard, can you just repeat the last part of that question? How do we?
So loyalty is about how people feel, not what they do. So how does that relate to lapsed activity? How do you address the challenge of targeting communications on things we can't record on a database?
I mean, most of what I've talked about really we can't record on a database. We record transactions, we record behaviors, and sometimes we'll record other information if we can capture it. And of course, I mean, one of the problems we have as a sector compared to other sectors is that we just don't have the same data and insights around people that retail have or other channels have. And lapsed supporters, because there's less interactions with them than many other supporters, there's probably even less. I'd probably argue it's the other way around, that if we don't get loyalty, Richard, you talk about this a lot. You talk about loyalty being a lead indicator, and you talk about lapsing being a lag indicator. In other words, by the time someone lapses, it's too late. We've missed that opportunity with them. And I think we have to get this right across the board. Now, lapsed supporters can still be intensely loyal, and that's where the difference between behaviour and behavioural loyalty and emotional loyalty comes in again. Just because someone has lapsed doesn't mean they don't love you anymore. And that's why it's so important to do things like when someone cancels their direct debit, to thank them and make them feel really good for what they've done rather than guilty about what they haven't done. And it's still just as important. The fact that they've loved you in the past means they might love you again in the future. Means they might still